Hi everyone, Ethan here with a basic CSS tutorial. In today's tutorial, we'll be reviewing CSS syntax and the 4 different components that make up CSS. These 4 components include the selector, the declaration block, the property, and the value. As you can see, we've started an example in CodePen. We have an H1 element and we have an ordered list element with 4 list items nested inside that ordered list. We've already started to style the H1 element with a font size of 36 pixels, a color of dark blue, and a font family of sans serif. For this tutorial, we're going to start styling the ordered list and the list items as well. Now, the first component of CSS we're going to be reviewing is the selector. Selectors are used to determine which HTML element to apply the styles to. So essentially, the selector points to the element you want to style. So as you can see in our example, the H1 here is going to be the selector because we're selecting the H1 element to style. So our next selector is going to be OL because we're selecting the ordered lists to style. The next CSS component we'll be reviewing is the declaration block. Now, the declaration block is enclosed in curly brackets and includes declarations. So declarations are essentially formatting instructions on how to style the selector. Now, since we have the selector already typed out, the next thing we're going to do is start the declaration block. Now, this is going to start with a squiggly bracket and a closing squiggly bracket. Once we add our brackets, I'm just going to hit return. That way we have our code spaced out correctly. And we can move on to the property component of CSS. So the property component declares what aspect of the selector you're styling. Properties are always followed by a colon. So in our example for our H1, we have a font size property, a color property, and a font family property. For the styling for our ordered list here, we're going to do a similar thing as we did with our H1 selector, and we're going to start with a font size property. We're also going to add a color property, which is going to change the color of the text. Which brings us to our last component of CSS, which is value. Now, the value declares how the property of the selector will be styled. Values are followed by a semicolon. So in our code, we're going to choose our font size property, and we're going to give it a value of 18px or 18 pixels. And we're going to close that out with a semicolon. We're also going to give it a color of red, and we're going to close that out with a semicolon. Here you can also use hex codes, but we'll be getting into that in a later tutorial. So as you can see, with a selector of OL, we are actually styling this ordered list because we are selecting it to style. We have our declaration block, which is our open squiggly bracket to our closing squiggly bracket and everything in between. We have our properties, which are font size and color, because these are the properties that we're going to be changing for our selector. And we also have the value of those properties. In this case, the values being 18 pixels for our font size for our ordered list and red for our font color for our ordered list. So just for a quick recap, there are 4 different components that make up CSS. These components include the selector, and selectors are used to determine which HTML element to apply the styles to. We have our declaration block, which is the opening squiggly bracket, the closing squiggly bracket, and everything in between. We have our properties, which declare what aspect of the selector you're styling, in this case, font size and color. And we also have value, which declares how the property of the selector will be styled. In this example, values being 18 pixels and red. Alright everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial on basic CSS syntax. Please check back for more.